The Offspring. Hoping to further his creator's work and perpetuate his species, Data creates his own child.
The first thing we find out in this episode is that Riker is away on leave, which is actually because Jonathan Frakes directed this episode. We see Troy, Wesley, and Geordi walking to Data's lab, and again, they're taking up the whole hallway as they walk.
They're also walking really fast. They're almost out of breath as they're talking.
Data has called them all because he wants to show them something. He's being very mysterious about it initially.
When the lab doors open, Data is holding a foot, and I was hoping for some kind of Frankenstein plot of him exploring humanity by taking people apart.
He reveals that he has created an android that looks like something out of the 90s Outer Limits.
The android is basically an attempted copy of himself, and he deems it his child.
Everyone's reactions to what Data has done are the usual one-sided ones, with Picard in particular being very stupid about it. I get why they're disturbed, but no one seems to take Data's android perspective into account.
It's a life, Data. It can't be activated and deactivated simply. This is a most stupendous undertaking.
Data calls the android Lal, and I wonder if these characters would be having such strong reactions if it didn't look humanoid. What if it was just a sentient box? Data and Troy take Lal to the holodeck to choose a physical appearance.
Interesting. Very attractive. I like her. A friend for Worf.
After Lal chooses, Data replicates the proper parts and says that
I was able to provide Lal with more realistic skin and eye color than my own.
it's interesting that he does not choose to do that for himself.
And it actually would have made even production of the show easier to not have to do makeup on Brent Spiner all the time.
But from the show's perspective, his appearance is very unique.
And part of his character.
Right. So Lal's training begins. How did you feel about Lal's training?
I thought the humor worked because it's played straight, and seeing everything from Data's perspective made it more interesting.
Even though Lal's brain is basically a copy of Data's, it's going to take time for it to reach its full potential.
Wesley asks what she does when Data is on duty, and he says,
She studies in our quarters. She requires very little supervision. Lal is quite self-sufficient.
I got the impression that things were going to go off track from leaving her alone, but surprisingly that's not what happens. There's a long take of Lal walking around and Data answering her questions, and I'm impressed that they pulled it off with all the dialogue that Brent Spiner has to spout out.
Picard has notified Starfleet of what Data has done, and of course Starfleet wants to take Lal away to study her, which quickly became a repeat of The Measure of a Man, and Data even said that Lal is basically an exact copy of him. If Lal was already at Data's intellectual capacity or physically looked just like Data, would this still be an issue?
At one point the Admiral says,
I would be willing to consider releasing Lal and Data to you so that he may continue his work with her.
His presence would undoubtedly retard the new android's progress.
which didn't make any sense. It would be more beneficial in every way to have an android down on the planet with her that not only theoretically works exactly the same way, but knows literally everything about her because he created her. And Data even points that out later.
I'm going to point out a lot of this episode didn't make sense, but they just kept going.
This guy was being a dick for no reason, and it felt very contrived.
I wouldn't be surprised if his character in the script was bad guy. Lala's having a difficult time adjusting because she's so different and doesn't understand the nuances of human behavior. And somehow, Lal has surpassed Data's programming, despite Data programming her to be based on him.
You said I've instead of I have.
It is a skill my program has never mastered.
Then I will desist.
No. You have exceeded my abilities.
Having Data speak without using contractions is a good way of differentiating him as an android, but the idea that he is actually incapable of it is just stupid. Admiral Halfdell contacts Picard again and says he will take Lal away if he doesn't like how she's being handled. It's another dumb, contrived moment of tension, but I did like how Picard was interrupted from sleeping. It's a little thing, but it adds a lot to the feel of living on the starship.
When he shows up to take Lal away, and the conclusions of Measure of a Man are brought up, he basically says, I don't give a shit, because using that episode would make this one not work.
Given how dumb it was, I was mostly just distracted by all the stuff in Picard's ready room and imagining him picking it back up after every battle scene.
It felt like the writing was just forcing itself forward despite not really having a reason, and it kept rehashing the same points over and over again.
When Halfdel tells Lal that he wants to take her away, she goes to Troy and tells her that she is afraid.
You are scared, aren't you?
I feel it.
It appears to be a symptom of cascade failure. It would require initialization of the base matrix without wiping out the higher functions.
I agree.
Data explains what he needs to do, and for some reason Halfdel volunteers to help.
So despite their best efforts, Lal dies, and Halftel is now sad? That didn't make any sense at all. I could see him being upset that he couldn't get his hands on Lal, but he was upset emotionally that she was going to die. We've seen this before, where an antagonist character does a 180 simply because the episode is coming to an end.
And that's the last we see of him. Data says goodbye to Lal,
If you're going to watch this episode, get your tissues out.
and then tells the others that he has transferred her memories into himself.
I wondered if that meant he understood what it felt like to have feelings. It's too bad the episode cut off there, because I would have liked a little more explanation of that. The Offspring, overall,
This episode was very frustrating. Everything with Data and Lal was surprisingly well handled. A lot of it wasn't necessarily super realistic, but for the episode it worked. There were a few dumb jokes by other characters, but overall the humor and character moments were effective, including the ending of Lal's life. Admiral Halfdel was the opposite of all that. He was a dumb character. Even his little character growth moment at the end was underdeveloped and just lame as hell. I wish the writers would realize that not every episode needs a clear villain or adversary. I was reminded of Booby Trap. In this case, I thought the episode would have been much better if it had played out the same way, but without Halftel there. The story would have been the same, the ending would have been the same, and if they had done that, I could easily see this going up maybe to a B+, but as it is, Halftel derails the episode as soon as he shows up, and he takes up so much screen time, I'm gonna go down to a B-.
I give it a B- as well. In addition to what you said about Halftil, I thought it was equally frustrating as soon as anyone else said, well, let's talk to the rest of Starfleet. He would just shut it down immediately, because he knew if it went out to anyone else, they'd be like, Halftil, you're being an idiot. I like this one as an exploration of humanity from Data's perspective. It was a really interesting concept, and the relationship between Data and Lal was really good. The different scenarios Lal was placed in, and the resulting discussions were also good. I'm not really sure how I felt about Lal surpassing Data emotionally, and I kind of expected Data to say, I'm going to use this experience and what I learned to try again at some point, but the matter is seemingly closed permanently.
That's a good point.